One more beer before I go. One more beer for the road. Give me 12 ounces of courage in my hand. Bartender, before you call, last call.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, just like I promised last time we talked, we're going to be doing the Corsa Performance closed box cold air intake. So without further ado, let's go ahead and unbox this thing. Okay, hopefully you've seen pretty well in that little unboxing what I pulled out, but here is the actual closed box. Inside is the filter. Here we have the intake pipe, and then here are the connection valves, as long as the metal connections, as well as the rubber ones. They sent us a Corsa Performance exhaust sticker. Let me know in the comments below if you think this should go on the truck. Then they also sent us a package of one red, one white, and one blue vinyl. We'll get into that here in a little bit. And they also sent an instruction manual, but you all know we don't read those. Let's look at what we need to get this done. Super simple when it comes to the tools needed for this install. An impact, or you can use a socket set if you want. Impact's going to definitely be easier. Two different sized extensions. I have a socket adapter, a 10, an 8 and a 10 millimeter socket, a Phillips head, and a T15 socket, as well as a pry removal tool. So without further ado, let's start the disassembly. Okay, once you get your hood popped on your underneath, there's two hoses you want to disconnect. The first one's right here. You want to push from the bottom up and then just pull back. Pull back just like that. Super simple. Then there's going to be one on the other side right up top here. You want to do the same thing, except on this one you push down and you pull out. That's simple. And from here you want to take that 8 millimeter socket with your extension and adapter, and you want to remove, or you want to loosen the hose here and the hose over here, just like so. Don't take it all the way out, just loosen it up. Super simple. After that, you want to remove this sensor. You pull up on that and then just disconnect it. Set it back here out of the way. After you have successfully done all of that, you can now kind of wiggle the pipe, connect it to your air box, and kind of pull up. And that takes your whole air box out. Just kind of set that to the side. Okay, for this next step, you'll need your pry removal tool and your impact with the 10 millimeter on it. You don't really need an extension here, just your adapter. But first, what we're going to do, let me set this impact out of the way. We're going to actually be removing, there are two push pins right here that are blocking us from getting to this bar, which is in the way of our air box. So we're actually going to remove these two push pins first, and then we're going to get this bar out of our way. If you don't have this pry tool, you don't necessarily need one. You can use other stuff. It is just, these make it way easier. As you can see, all you need to do is find the open part, pry up, get in the center, and then pull back. Also, without giving any hints, what did you notice changed between the last little clip and this part. After that, you're done with the pry tool. You can set it out of the way. Comment below if you know the answer, by the way. Now you want to carefully pry back and get your 10mm socket right on. I don't know if you can see how well you can see it. Take it all the way out. Once you got that removed, this is still going to be well, actually it's not. If this is too hard to move after you got it removed, which mine isn't, all you need to do is hit this. I'm actually going to do it anyway so I don't tear nothing up. Hit this once or twice, kind of break it, so that way you can get it out of the way. Now we can move on to the next part. Now that you've gotten that bar out of your way, just get up in here and kind of just wiggle this a little bit. Comes right out. Set this aside. Okay, here's the part where an extension will come into play. You can't see all 4 of them, but if you look directly down, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one is somewhere over here. Back down over here, you can't really see it, but you want to take all 4 of those bolts out. Okay, hopefully you didn't do what I wanted to do at this part of the process and throw this across the garage once you pulled it off, because we do actually have to remove the sensor and install it onto our new tubing. So to do that, mine is a T15, so I have that and I will use it. Just be careful if you're using the impact to not strip or tear up this. And as soon as we take this off, we're going to install it onto the new one. I'm going to do it just like this. Your kit will come with 2 new screws, so you do not have to reuse these. But a good rule of thumb is to keep everything, just in case you ever want to sell this vehicle and decide to revert back to stock. So just a heads up so you don't get too stressed out, this will only go on one way. So if it doesn't fit or doesn't look like it went on the right way, just rotate it. As you see, I did there on purpose. I showed you one way to install it and it does not line up. You can see straight down that is not lined up. Then you rotate it and you can see it lined up. So let's start these by hand with the new screw, which the new screw that comes with mine are Phillips, so I will have to change over to a Phillips head for these, so that way I can properly install these. But just make sure that you have the proper tool for whatever it is that that yours requires. Put that on there. And now we're going to very carefully drive that one in just a little bit. Come back over here. Drive that one in. Kind of bounce back and forth. So that you want this to be on there as tight as possible to avoid any air leaks. There you go. Make sure that one's tight. Beautiful. Okay, next step after we have this properly seated and you have removed the old air box out of the way, you want to take the smaller coupler. You can see, you can definitely tell the difference when you look at them side by side. This one does a step down. This one looks about the same and it's got that big bubble in the middle. You want to take the step down coupler on the elbow side and we're going to go ahead and we're going to seat this on. You want to get it on there best you can. Make sure it's seated well. You can see how well I got that seated. Then you want to take one of the clamps that is come with the kit, and you're going to simply put that on there. A good rule of thumb here is to always face these up, so that way they're easily accessible in the truck when you're working from inside the engine bay. And then you're going to take that 10mm and you're going to tighten this one up. Now when if I ever have to work on this, if you're viewing it from inside the engine bay, that's how it's going to be looking, so I can easily get to that. And it's got a good smooth seat across the good seal there. And then if you notice, if you have the whole kit broke apart, you have one small clamp. That small clamp will get seated on the other side of this step down, and you do not tighten that down, of course, until we get it fully installed. Now let's move on to the other side. You want to get this one seated. If you look inside of this little section here, you want to get this all the way in there. But before you do so, go ahead and put a clamp on beforehand, just make life easier. And then let's get this seated on here. Don't be afraid to push it. You'll feel when it hits where it needs to go, you might be able to push a little bit too far, like I just did. Nonetheless, set it where it needs to be set and get this clamp right where you want it. Make sure you got a nice smooth connection. Hit it with that 10mm, make sure it's tight, and we're good to go. This right here is a step that you do not have to do, but it's going to make life easier for the rest of this install. But I'm going to go ahead and remove the top of this closed box. To do so, it's just 4 Phillips heads. Rock those out real quick. So be careful doing this. If you're not comfortable with an impact, use just a screwdriver, so that way you don't have to worry about over torquing later when we go to put this back on and actually busting this glass. And then you just kind of reach in from behind to push it out so you don't have to force it. And we're going to set that aside. I'm going to set it face down because it does have that protective film on it, so that way nothing can damage the seal on the other side. Okay guys, once you got the cover taken off the top of this, to give you kind of a nice orientation, you want this to go directly down where the old airbox set. It is a little bit of a tight fit, but it will go in. And the tricky part from here, the 2 bolts that you took out on the old box will be replaced on the top of this. You'll see it if you look at the box before you install it. So there's no way for me to show you, but both of those will go in the top part of here. Just a quick tip before hand thread these to make sure they are all the way in, and then do not fully tighten them down, so that way you have some wiggle room for the rest of this install on putting the actual tubing in and getting everything seated. Just tighten them down just enough to where it's not going to shake, but make sure you still have enough wiggle room afterwards. Okay, once you have that seated, next step is to install the tubing. You want to install on the airbox side first, so make sure you have all of your clamps already on. And let's get everything seated first. You want to force it on that way. This side over here is pretty tight, but just stay vigilant, and on it goes. Once you have both sides fully seated, make sure and adjust the loose clamps and make sure everything is visible. I don't know if you can see from where you are, but this clamp is too low, so I'm going to actually loosen it up and move it up so it's easier to see in the future. But other than that, it's just time to tighten these clamps. Rotate this one up here so that way I can see it better if I ever have to do any work on this in the future, or if I ever sell it and keep it like this. I'd hate for someone to get underneath here and not be able to find this clamp. Tighten that one up, and then we'll rotate this one over. Tighten it up. This one's already good. but just in case, hit it again. Make sure this one's seated on here good. See, it wasn't. You gotta make sure it's on there right. That's an easy tell. If it starts to collapse a little bit, that means it's not far enough over. There it is. Next step, let's get the air filter installed. Make sure you have your clamp on, and like every other clamp, let's make sure it's visible from the outside if we ever have to work on this truck in the future. Best way to do it is drop it down and then pull the bottom up. We'll transfer the clamp back over here. Pop it on there just like that. And then we're just going to find the screw part of the clamp, and we're going to pull it up to where we can reach it. And real quick, before I won't push it on there all the way, and I'm just going to tighten it up. Ain't going nowhere. After we get the air filter in, next step might as well be to reinstall this acrylic lid. Kind of set it down. I'm not going to remove this blue plastic until I'm done, just because I don't trust myself not to accidentally scratch it up. But it does give a nice look to this engine. After you get this set, hand tighten these Phillips head screws to make sure they thread in. See, like this one right here is giving me a fit. You want to make sure that they are threaded in there right before you start, so that way there's no chance of you slipping and accidentally busting through this cover. Get that one in there. Pull this, get it out of my way. Take that Phillips head and just tighten them down. Like I said earlier, if you're not comfortable using a socket to do this, you can use a screwdriver. But this way you can ensure, or that way you would ensure that you don't accidentally over torque it and crack this plastic. Okay, this next step's pretty self-explanatory. Since we're already over here, let's go ahead and pull this up. Let's reinstall the screw over here. Hand tighten it first, just to make sure we got it on there. Last thing you want to do is accidentally cross thread something in your engine, and you got to find a way to fix it. Peel this back carefully, tighten that side down, and come over here. If you broke that side, go ahead and tighten it down so that way that doesn't move. And then while we're here, let's go ahead and reinstall our push pins. Keep them in this position, and then once you get it in there, push it down. If it did fall out, it's a lot easier to pry out with your finger. Keep it that way. Good thing I have extra. Try not to let that happen, but it's always good to keep extra of these around. These things break all the time. Put that new one in there, and you're good to go. Okay, next step, those two hoses that we disconnected at the beginning of the uninstall or the disassembly, we need to remove those and replace them with new hoses. So the first one's over here. You're gonna do the same thing you did on the front. You push down on that little tab, pull right up. And for that one, we're going to be using the smaller hose. You can visibly tell the difference. You want to make sure you push it all the way down to feel it pop. and you connect it into the closest side on the intake tubing. Then we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to just grab this one. Oh, wrong one. Here it is. Pull that one off, set it to the side. We're going to make sure we get this all the way seated on. Hear that pop. And then get that seated on there. This cool thing that Corsa sends you is this hose retainer clip. So we actually use it here. You're gonna pop these two hoses on right here. This will ensure that these stay up and out of the way. And then you need to find your sensor clip here. And you're gonna push it down, hear that click, and then you're going to push this red locking tab down to ensure that it's locked into place. Double check those real quick, make sure they're fully seated. There you go. Does it go?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Once you completed that step, that is it for this install of the Corsa closed box cold air intake. Try to say that 3 times fast.
Corsa, Corsa, Corsa.
The whole thing.
Huh?
The whole thing.
What?
Corsa closed box cold air intake.
Corsa, closed back, cold.
Exactly. It's a mouthful. Took me a little bit to get it done. But that is it. I will give this probably, I'd say, about an hour, hour and a half install by myself here in the garage. If you have the tools that I showed you to use, it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. If you use this YouTube video, it'll be easy to follow along. I'll also post below another video you can use. Kind of goes into more depth about why you should switch. I'll also post a link so you can purchase this. I bought it from American Trucks, but there's probably other places you can find it. That's the link I'll have below. I'm also going to be trying something new, but hopefully it doesn't get met with a whole lot of hate. But I'm also going to put a Venmo tag down below, so that way if you feel generous enough to help sponsor this YouTube channel, you can. You definitely don't have to. I don't expect it, but I'm going to try it. There's no reason not to. Me and the wife don't like paying out of pocket for some of this stuff.
I know that's right.
So it's in there. If you feel generous enough, I will appreciate it. And I will be doing a shout out on every podcast and YouTube channel. The following podcast and or YouTube channel, or YouTube video, if you donate. So if you donate, you'll get a shout out on the following video or podcast. I did not 100% figure out what these go to.
I don't know what it is.
I believe that you could change the color of the Corsa on the acrylic covering. I'm not going to do that. I like the blacked out look. Also, this little tag, it's a little stick tag. I believe they send it to you so you can stick it onto your intake. I'm not going to. I'm going to hang on to it somewhere else to keep it safe. Along with my paperwork, always hang on to that. And then lastly, before we leave,
He's got binders.
Lastly, before we leave, I would want you all to comment below and tell me where I should put this. If you think I should put it in the garage, on the fridge, or if I should put it on the back of the truck. I only have one other sticker right there, back there right now. So any ideas would be helpful. Something like that.
Yep.
Other than that, we are done. Gonna clean up, go get some food, drive his truck around, see if anything changes. I'll update you on the changes in the next video if it does actually improve the truck. So if you want to wait for that video, you can. If you want to decide, and you can just come back and use this. I'm going to take this real quick and flip you around. Actually, no, I'm not. But I also put this. I put this on today. It is a AVS Aero Skin Bug Shield. Not her. This. It's pretty aerodynamic, and it's going to help keep the rocks and bugs off the truck. Other than that, thank you all so much for tuning in. I will see you next time.
Bye.
One more beer before I go. One more beer for the road. Give me 12 ounces of courage in my hand. Bartender, before you call last call and you kick me out of here.